Chapter 19. Refocus. Faddy felt like a hairy single-cell paramecium immobilized under a microscope, squashed between two plates of glass. He wished he could fly right out of the window, but he couldn't. Trapped, he sat in a slippery vinyl chair under Principal Hornstein's probing gaze. "So, boys, what are we going to do about this?" said Principal Hornstein. He leaned forward on his desk and intertwined lean fingers with tufts of brown hair growing at the bases. Faddy held his tongue and glanced to his right. Ike slouched next to him, inspecting his fingernails. He too said nothing. Principal Hornstein had sent the school secretary to call both of them into his office 15 minutes earlier. Ignoring a feeling of impending doom, Faddy had felt a surge of satisfaction as he'd seen Ike's face. The redhead's lips were still puffy from where Faddy had clobbered him. A flame of anger went through him. He's just a bully. I'm not going to let him beat me. Principal Hornstein sighed. The janitor told me there were 3 boys involved in the fight. 2 ran away and 1 stayed, which was Faddy. Now, Ike, the janitor recognized you. He'd seen you snooping around his supply closet, but he couldn't place the other boy. So, why don't you tell me who he is? Faddy waited, watching Ike fidget in his seat. I could tell Principal Hornstein, he thought. I could get them both busted for attacking me, for breaking my camera, for ruining my chances to win the competition. Ike looked down at his feet and mumbled, "It's a guy I know from Cesar Chavez Elementary across town." "I see," said Principal Hornstein. He leaned back in his chair with raised eyebrows. "And what is his name?" "Leo," said Ike a little bit too quickly. "I don't know his last name." Principal Hornstein turned to Faddy. "Do you know this Leo?" Faddy took a deep breath. Felix's name was on the tip of his tongue, ready to tumble out. "No, I don't," he said. Ike straightened in his chair, blinking slowly. Faddy caught Ike staring at him. Ike's pale grey eyes narrowed. Faddy gave him a cold stare in return. "I'm not a tattletale, and I'm not going to get even through Principal Hornstein." Ike frowned and looked away. "The janitor mentioned the boy was Asian," prodded Principal Hornstein. "I think Leo's a Filipino, a Korean or something," fumbled Ike. "I see," said Principal Hornstein. "So, no last name Leo is Filipino or Korean or something. I'll have to call Principal Jackson over at Cesar Chavez and see who this Leo is." The 2 boys sat still, not moving a muscle. "Without any cooperation, I'm left with no choice. The policy for fighting on school grounds is set. 3-day suspension starting today. I'm going to have to call your parents, so why don't you both take seats outside?" Faddy bristled at the unfairness of it, but remained silent. He pushed off from his seat and stalked to the door, elbowing past Ike. As he'd sat simmering in his chair, his mind had been working overtime. He'd come up with a plan, and he needed to put it into action. As Faddy waited outside Principal Hornstein's office for his father to pick him up, he asked the secretary if he could use the bathroom. At her curt nod, he headed toward the art studio. He had to talk to Miss Bethuna. He didn't care if he was busted if they caught him. He was on a mission. He had a little more than 80 hours left, and somehow he was going to enter that competition. Miss Bethuna saw Faddy enter and she froze. "Faddy!" she exclaimed. "Oh my goodness, what happened?" She put down the painting that she had been about to hang up and hurried over. Faddy gave her a brief version of what had happened, leaving out Felix's involvement. "And they broke your camera?" asked Miss Bethuna. "It's completely destroyed," said Faddy, with a deep sigh. His eyes glinted with anger and the bruise on his temple throbbed. "I'm so sorry, Faddy," whispered Miss Bethuna. She patted him on the shoulder. "Look, I think maybe you should tell Principal Hornstein that you didn't start the fight." "No," said Faddy. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that." "You've put me in a tough spot, Faddy," said Miss Bethuna. "I need to tell Principal Hornstein what I know. Can you just pretend you don't know anything, please?" whispered Faddy. Miss Bethuna let out a deep sigh. Well, I guess I'm not lying to save you from getting caught or receiving punishment, she thought out loud. If you want to be punished for something you didn't do, I guess I could keep quiet, though I don't like it. Thanks, Miss Bethuna, said Faddy with relief and changed the subject. I'm still going to enter the competition. Well, you can borrow the photo club practice camera. She unlocked her desk drawer and pulled it out. No, I won't need it, said Faddy. The club's camera didn't work properly since so many students had fiddled with it over the years. I just wanted to request some more time if possible. Well, I was going to collect the pictures on Thursday after school. After putting the packet together, my goal was to mail it out on Friday. Can I give my photo to you on Friday? It's just that I need a day to take the picture, process the negatives, and then develop the print in the darkroom. The day I come back from suspension. Oh, and get it dry. Well, considering the circumstances, I think that would be okay. But I need your entry form and photograph no later than by the end of the day Friday. Thank you, Miss Bethuna, said Faddy with a heartfelt grin. Now he had to ask a good friend for a favour. That and figure out what to shoot. Later that night, Faddy poked at the chicken stew with his bread as the family sat for dinner. He glanced at his father's exhausted face from under his eyelashes and felt a stab of guilt coupled with shame. After his talk with Principal Hornstein, Habib had driven Faddy home. While stopped at the railroad crossing, he turned to Faddy and asked what had happened. So Faddy had told him the truth, even about Felix. Habib had shaken his head sadly and asked if Faddy would reconsider telling Principal Hornstein the truth. When Faddy explained that he couldn't, Habib surprised him by accepting the decision. He knows it's about honour, thought Faddy, feeling even worse. He watched his mother stir the yoghurt, her face solemn, thoughts adrift. Faddy knew her mind was wrapped up in the recent bombing of eastern Afghanistan. It was breaking news all over the television. Habib hadn't wanted to burden her with news of Faddy's suspension, so it was to be their little secret. He'd be spending the next 2 days at the Fremont Library, keeping up with his schoolwork. Faddy looked across the small dining table and smiled slightly as Noor gave him a wink. For a moment, despite the chaos swirling around him, his heart felt full. He was thankful for his family, thankful that they were safe. The emotion caught him off guard. He saw his father squeeze his mother's hand and she gave him a glimmer of a smile in return. As he chewed on a piece of bread, Faddy smiled. He knew exactly what he was going to shoot.